Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of DeLoreanTECH, and today we are going to install these. These are ribbed side trim for the front fascias that I bought from DeLorean Go. And originally, I believe, at least is what they've said, is that these were originally for the European spec cars. They had intended to have these installed right here to sort of finish off the front fascia, and so that it kind of matches the front grille a little bit. So I mean, it kind of does. It doesn't have as many of the ribs, but it gets a little bit more narrow as you get closer to the edge over here anyway. I've also installed their DeLorean Go's ribbed headlight finishers, as you can see right here. I don't need to videotape that. It's pretty easy. You just actually I screwed it onto the existing headlight finisher, and it actually works better because this particular one doesn't have a part that comes across over here to hide the screw that's in there. So I just went ahead and installed this right on top of the headlight finisher. So I actually ended up getting some longer screws, slightly longer screws right here, because the stock headlight finisher that's in there has this little raised area that pushes it out too far, so you need to get a longer screw right there. As far as these go, the side trim, DeLorean Go has two different versions of this, one with a screw hole in the middle and one without. I've got the one with the screw hole in it, mainly because I kind of jumped the gun early and I bought it before they had an option with no screw hole. And but I'm gonna go ahead and install it anyway. I'm gonna screw it in. I think that you could go either way. If you install this without the screw, either just stick this on or get the one without the screw hole, then you're talking about sort of a semi-permanent installation right here, which would make it very difficult, if not impossible, to gain access to the headlight screws inside there. So screwing it in may be a better option if that's your preference. For me, I'm always messing around with the headlights anyway, so that's the option I'm going to go with. The downside is that you're screwing into your front fascia. However, I don't plan on removing these like ever, so I'm not too worried about it. Maybe somewhere down the road, when I stop messing around with the headlights, I will maybe pick up the ones with a screw hole. But the screw hole itself is pretty low profile. With the screw in it, it doesn't really make that big of a difference. It's not very noticeable. The screw sits in there pretty flush. Doesn't really protrude out too much. It's not, you can definitely see it, but it's not an eyesore or anything. The screw itself is a very thin screw. So we will go ahead and see how that works out. I may use some tape. I'm not going to stick this on with any adhesive or anything that would cause sort of a permanent installation. I know there's other ways of removing it, but I just don't want to damage anything in here if I did have to remove it with some really strong adhesive on it. So I might put some double-sided tape here just to keep it on a little bit more securely along with the screw here. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so what I've done is I've gone ahead and stuck some blue tape on the back here, and that way I can get an idea where I need to position this thing. You want to position it so that it sits sort of midway between the top and the bottom of the headlamps if you can. If you just kind of place it in there, it kind of seems to sit naturally just in this general area. So you've got a little bit of a gap right here and a little bit down here, so it kind of sits. I'm thinking probably like right there would probably be a good position. You want to make sure it's not sticking out too far here. So I'm going to push it in a little bit. Just kind of adjust it to your preference, what you think would look good, and then push it in, get an idea of how that's going to look. So another thing is you want to make sure that around here you have a consistent space between the side trim and the very edge of the fascia. You don't want it to be crooked or out of alignment. You want to make sure this thing looks like it was supposed to be installed on the car. The other thing you're going to do is you're going to want to stand back and look at this thing. You know, stand back a little bit and see how it looks. It may be that you end up not liking it. I actually like it. I think it looks pretty cool. I think it doesn't really change the look, but it definitely improves it. It adds to it a little bit. I don't think it looks out of place. I think I'm going to go for it. I actually kind of like how it does tie into the grille pretty well. I don't know if you can catch it on the camera, but I'm looking at it off camera and it looks pretty good. It looks like it belongs on the car. Okay, so I've got my screw. And I'm just going to go ahead and attach my screwdriver right here to the hole a little bit. I'll hold this down so it doesn't move. I've got the tape on, but I just want to make sure. So then I'm going to hold on to my screw here so that it doesn't move around, and I'm just going to lightly tap into the fascia. Again, I'm going to, once I've got the hole tapped, I'm going to take it off and then apply some double-sided tape as sort of an extra layer of security, so in case something happens it doesn't fall off. And since it's going to be tape, it'll be a little easier to remove if I need to remove it. I don't want to overly tighten it, but it looks pretty good. I mean, looking at it right now with a naked eye, I can't even see the screw. I don't even notice it. So I'm not. I think this is probably a better option. At least for me, it's a better option because I do tend to. If you've watched my videos, you know I've probably taken my headlights off at least over a dozen times. So now I'm gonna go ahead and move the screw, and we're gonna see what the screw hole actually looks like. So if we got the screw out, set that aside, and we're just gonna go ahead and remove these, and there's the hole in the fascia right there. And we don't need these anymore. We can use them for the other side. And the hole in the fascia is really not that bad, but it is what it is. This is how you're going to install these. There's really no way around it unless you decide you want to just stick these on. I would go with the ones without the screw hole if that's your preference. There's nothing wrong with it, but again, it will be difficult getting to the headlight screws. So what I'm going to do now is get a hold of some VHB tape, and then I'm going to go ahead and apply that to the back here. Oh yeah, and before you apply the tape, you're going to want to prep both surfaces on both the fascia and the side trim with some alcohol just to make it stick better. So I've cleaned off the fascia and the back of the side trim with some alcohol. And so it's nice and dry there, and then I'm going to go ahead and apply the tape. Okay, so I've applied my VHB tape to the back here. I didn't put too much on there. I don't think you need it. I just wanted to add another layer of security in case this thing wants to fall off or whatever. So first thing you want to do, put the screw back in and just line it back up with the screw hole. By the way, I pushed in, there's a little bit of plastic and paint that had kind of started coming out a little bit. I just pushed it back into that hole right there. And now I'm going to line up the side trim, making sure that I'm over the hole there. Okay, and just screw it back in. Aligned the way I'm supposed to be aligned. And I'm applying some force here. Just make sure that the tape sets it. I don't want to over tighten that. Back off a little bit, take a look at it. It looks pretty good. It feels pretty solid. You want to hold that down a little bit, make sure that the tape adheres to both surfaces. So just apply some pressure for about 20 seconds or so, and then we can work on the other side. So I'm getting ready to screw this one in, but just a comment. One thing I did notice is that these may not line up exactly the same on both sides. I noticed that that one is just a tad bit lower. It's just because the fascia is not perfect, and I think the important thing is just to make sure you get it on where it sits easiest, where it doesn't have a gap, too much of a gap in here. You're gonna have a little bit of a gap. It is what it is because the fascia tends to want to kind of concave on the inside right there. Fortunately, this is a little bit flexible. Just wanted to point that out. Okay, so what I've done on the driver's side is I've actually applied the VHB tape along the back side of the trim. I wanted to see if that would help as far as the gap that's here between the trim and the fascia. So let's see what happens. So I've already tapped my hole right there. It's very small, as you can see, and I've got the trim ready to go. I've got the VHP applied to the back this time, and I may adjust the other side. That's a good thing about doing it this way is if you need to, you can adjust it a little bit with the adhesive. If you were to go with a permanent adhesive, it's kind of a one-time deal. Then you've got to cut off or cut out the trim. I'll go ahead and start screwing it in. Just got to make sure you line it up correctly. And once you get pretty close, you're going to want to try to line it up as best you can and push it in for that final. So I'm pushing it in. I'm going to go ahead and finish screwing it in. And there it is. So again, you want to put some pressure here as much as you can. These things are fairly flexible. Hold that for 20 seconds and then you should be good to go. So this one actually turned out a little better, I think. There isn't very much of a gap right here. On the other side there's a little bit of a gap, just the way the fascia is shaped. But both sides look really good, I think. I think it turned out really well, and I'm not too worried about this thing falling off. So for the passenger side, I was able to reduce the gap that was here between the edge of the fascia and the trim. There's a little bit of a gap right in here. It's mainly because the trim is actually hitting the fascia at this point. For whatever reason, the fascia kind of bends inward a little bit more down here at the bottom. But overall, the gap is much better. So I'm actually really liking these. I put the VHP tape along the back side of this so that it adds a little bit of an angle to it, so it brings the seam here together, so you don't have as much of a gap in there. And you can kind of mess around a little bit. You can still tighten these up a little bit more, just to get a better fit. But so far I'm liking it. Yeah, look pretty good. Yeah, definitely looks pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with these. Another thing too is that I noticed on the fascia, I think it was actually on the passenger side, there was some damage, and now that's covered up, so I don't have to worry about ever having to fix that. And this actually adds a really nice look to it. So there you have it, and kind of ties in with these. These are a little harder to see because they're so far in. I'm thinking what I might do is come up with something to bring them out so that they're a little bit more flush with the headlamps here. So you still have about ½ an inch of space, or a ½ an inch of depth here that could be used to make a more of a flush look. So get a longer screw and put a spacer between this and the finishing plate, and that should do it. So we'll see what happens. Anyway guys, there's the video. I think they're pretty good and I recommend them. Thanks for watching.